We are live.
All right, thank you so much. So welcome everybody to the March meeting of the Urban Forestry Commission. My name is Amy Smith. I'm the chair. We're just going to start with some introductions. So again, Amy Smith, chair of the UFC. I don't see Dawn here yet. No. There we go. Just as I said it. Okay, welcome Dawn. We're just starting introductions if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Dawn Chavez, the Executive Director of Asheville Greenworks.
Thank you. And let's see here. So I am looking at commission members. I'm just going to call you as I see you on my screen. So Karen.
Hi everyone, I'm Karen McNeil and I'm a member of the Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon Summerall, member of Urban Forestry Commission, TRC representative.
Thank you. Patrick?
Yes, Patrick Gilbert. I'm a member of the Urban Forestry Commission and chair of its policy working group.
Thank you. And Zoe?
Zoe Boyle, Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. Shardon?
Hello, I'm Shardon. I'm the newest member of the Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. All right, and I see that Kim Roney is here. If you want to introduce yourself.
Happy sunny afternoon. Kim Roney, Asheville City Council.
Thank you so much. And we have city staff with us today. Let's see, I see Chris Collins. You can introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Collins with Development Services.
Thank you. Hunter?
I'm Hunter Spitzer. I'm with Development Services, Planning Tech.
Thank you. Haley?
I'm Haley Mahoney. I'm with Development Services, helping out staff assistant to the UFC and development review specialist.
Thank you. Lee Morrison, are you with the city or are you with Alternative Compliance?
Lee Morrison, City of Asheville, Public Works Department.
All right, good. Thanks for being here. Nice to meet you. And Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Blevins, Urban Planner with the Development Services Department.
Thank you. And Keith, how about you? Are you with Alternative Compliance?
I'm actually unofficially the urban forester for the city of Asheville, as well as that's fine. That's great. But I'm still with Parks and Rec up until I believe March 20th.
All right. Well, hold on to that. Good to meet you. We'll circle back around. Nice to meet you. Thank you. All right, Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy Watford, Zoning and Stormwater Supervisor in Development Services. Yes, we'll introduce the new urban forester in that agenda item.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, Chad.
So I'm Chad Bandy. I'm the Streets Division Manager in Public Works.
All right, thank you. And Mark Foster.
Yeah, Mark Foster, City of Asheville Public Works Arborist.
All right, thanks. All right, and so a couple other people. Matt Sprouse, are you with Alternative Compliance for today?
Yes, I'm Matt Sprouse with Sucker Studios, and we have the Alternative Compliance application in front of you today.
All right, thank you. We'll be with you in just a moment. And Ed Macy.
Yeah, Ed Macy, former commission member and technical advisor to the Urban Forestry Commission.
Good title. I like that one. All right, thank you. All right, did I miss anyone? I think that's everybody. All right, so we'll call the meeting to order. And so Sharon, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to add to new business, if I may, a topic about the new Aspire development, which is the Baptist Church. I'd like to go over a review on some of the topics of that if we have time.
So we have a motion to add a new business item to the agenda. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. So let's do a roll call vote. And this will be to add the Aspire development project to new business. Dawn?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Zoe?
Aye.
Shardon?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
And Karen?
Aye.
I vote aye. So we'll add that and get to it under new business. I did want to point also that absent today is UFC Council or Commission member Cecil Bothwell is absent. All right. Next, we have approval of the minutes from our last meeting in February. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review the action minutes in the documents for today. So I just need a motion to approve the minutes.
So move.
In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. And a roll call vote. Dawn?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Thank you. Zoe?
Aye.
Chardon?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
That's okay. And I vote aye. All right. So the minutes are approved. So moving right along, next is the alternative compliance submission for 88 West Chestnut. So I'm guessing Jennifer is going to lead us through a presentation.
I am. So, Hunter, if you can get us I guess just the site plan at this point, the landscape plan, would be good. And I'll note that I see Kevin Kerr has just joined us, and this is, I believe he's the developer for this project. So the address is 88 West Chestnut Street. It was formerly addressed as 119 Cumberland Avenue, but that has been changed. The project is an adaptive reuse of a former place of worship. So the existing building is vacant. It's going to be converted into a multifamily development with 6 residential units. And the change of use will require that the site be brought into compliance with all of the applicable standards in Article 11, a number of which are landscape standards. So the proposed design does comply with all of the landscape standards for street trees, street buffer shrubs, parking lot landscaping, and building impact landscaping. But in addition to that, a type A property line buffer is required along the east property line due to the RS8 zoning to the east. And the issue today is that the building is partially within that buffer area. So there is a standard in the code allowing a staff approved alternative to a property line buffer to reduce that buffer with the addition of a 6-foot high opaque fence, and then half of the buffer width would be allowed and half of the plant materials would be allowed. In this case, mainly I think because of the topography, the applicant is requesting to eliminate that fence, and they're going to provide all of the plant materials actually with an addition of 3 evergreen trees which are existing and 13 additional shrubs, but they're not going to be providing the fence, and so therefore staff could not approve that at our level. So I'm right here if you have any questions, if I didn't make anything clear. And Matt Sprouse, landscape architect, is also with us in case you have any questions for him.
All right, thank you. Do we have a picture of the site plan just to look at?
Yeah, let's cruise on through, Hunter, and get to the site plan if we can. I'm not sure which document that is exactly within this. Okay, so there was so this is the area of focus. There's the existing building you see, and the building itself is actually within that required buffer area. So they're providing all of the required plant materials, but there's a little drop off, and so the fence would be a good bit lower than the adjacent property, so it wouldn't provide an effective screen at all. So they're proposing all of the plant material that would be required with those few additions but it'll just be planted in a narrower width along that property line.
Okay, thank you.
Matt,
Are there any
did I explain
questions?
that?
Oh, sounded good to me.
Yeah, okay.
All right, questions from commission members. Sharon?
Can you just scroll down to the existing picture, the one that shows the...
There you go.
Yeah. How wide is that, actually? 10 feet at the most?
That is around 10 to 12 feet. If you can see those arborvitaes in the distance, those show up on the site plan. If you can reference that as existing arborvitaes. So it is.
They're right on the. Yeah, they're right on the property line, aren't they?
Right on the property line. You can see the building itself steps into the buffer already, almost halfway through.
Yeah, to continue my thought, when I reviewed it, I didn't see any way else you could deal with this. And it's such heavy shade. I was just worried about what you're planting, whether it'd be able to tolerate that much heavy shade that's over there. But, you know, I don't see a way around this other than that. But that was my opinion when I previewed it last week.
I'm happy to comment on the plant species. I think the owner has a comment. He's raised his hand.
Yeah, I wanted to by our neighbors, and through the HRC approval, they shared that, you know, that they wanted us to not destroy them. So we integrated it into our plan, and those were previously planted by our immediate neighbors.
That was the arborvitaes, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And just to address Ms. Summerall's question about the shade, which I appreciate you thinking about that. The arborvitaes have done well there since they've been growing there for a while. The other species that we've specified on that shady side of the building should thrive. And we're looking at, you know, shade tolerant plants, mostly shrubs and some ground cover and some medium trees. So we feel pretty good about how those will survive and fill in back there.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought the same, except the ground cover. But then, you know, I don't expect ground cover in that kind of area to do all that well anyway. But that's my poor results of dealing with ground cover and heavy shade. But I think it's workable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Do we have any public comment on this item before we vote?
None are in the public conference line, so I think we can proceed.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, we can have a motion and a vote. Anybody want to make a motion? Go ahead, Sharon.
I make a motion that we approve the this alternative compliance as stated on the plan.
All right. Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
All right. Thanks, Dawn. All right. Roll call vote. We'll start with Dawn.
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Zoe?
Aye.
Chardon?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the alternative is approved. So thank you so much to the applicant and the developer.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So Cecil made it. He had a link issue.
Yeah.
Welcome. You want to introduce yourself?
Cecil Bothwell, member of the Urban Forestry Commission. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Glad you can make. We just did alternative compliance. Sorry you missed that, but
I read through it and I would have voted aye. Yeah.
okay. Well, good. Thank you. Okay. So that brings us to public comment. Was there any call-in public comment at this time? No. We did receive one email public comment. It's a very long email. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll give you the highlights. So this public comment relates to the Asheville Municipal Golf Course project, continued concerns. And the letter basically talks about how they've been concerned about removals of trees that were not marked with ribbons, as well as pruning that looks like it won't be healthy enough for the trees and that they will deteriorate, as well as a lack of the primary arborist being on site at the location. So again, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Those were the primary concerns submitted by, let's get it right, Gloria Shen. So thank you, Gloria, for your message. We'll be talking about the golf course in a moment, but Sharon? Just more, yeah, wait till we get there. All right, thank you. Yeah, we'll address the golf course. I invited Chris Coral, the project manager, but he had a full schedule today. I'm not sure if he'll be able to make it, but when we talk about the golf course, we can make a list of questions to forward to Chris if needed. So, all right, brings us to staff reports. First on here is City Arborist report. Mark, do you have an update?
Nothing super exciting. It's pretty much business as usual, other than the windstorms we keep having. We responded to, or will have responded to, 18 sites in the last couple days. So it's been kind of busy. It'd be fine if the wind would knock it off.
Yeah, well, if we could only say so, that'd be great. Now, we don't always have streets and parks here with us, so I'm just going to open it up if Chad or Lee had any updates for us.
I think Lee has an update on some tree removals on Charlotte Street. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. We have that.
Yeah.
And were we able to add that in? We're just doing it as a staff report. Okay. Yeah. Well then, Lee, if you have time now, why don't you give us that update?
Okay. The street department will be replacing some sidewalk from Biltmore Avenue on Charlotte Street. The address is 179 South Charlotte Street, out in front of the ABC store. There is 5 trees that are buckling the sidewalk quite heavily right through that area, and it's been an issue for a very long time. And we are just now in a place that we can get out there and get that work done. It will require those 5 trees to be removed, but we'll be planting back trees within the city's property at 179 South Charlotte Street. So that's one of the benefits of this project is we can actually, we have the space to put trees back. So we are taking those 5 out. We'll be putting, working with Mark Foster on that endeavor about taking those trees down, and what we'll place back, it sounds like some white oaks and poplars would be going back there. Go ahead.
Yeah, Sharon, go ahead.
Hi, I'm on Easton Valley. We're having a neighborhood meeting this week, and that's our neighborhood area. Do we know when those coming down so I can let everybody know at our neighborhood meeting?
It probably will be within the month.
Okay.
Hopefully we can get all our ducks in a row, but hopefully around a month would be about that time frame.
Did I hear you say a species that you know yet, or you're not sure? TBD?
TBD, but yes, some white oaks and poplars is what Mark might be recommending, just because of the site. We have some restrictions of some overhead power, and then some existing trees we want to respect.
Okay,
right
great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Shardon.
I'm wondering, have you explored keeping the trees while replacing the sidewalk, sort of like they're doing on Vermont?
Yes, we have. The one big drawback are they're like 2 to 3 inches off of the back of the sidewalk, so they really were not ever placed in a place that it would be sustainable. We did look at like bridging them, but due to some ADA ramps, the existing utility strip, driveway access, and everything like that, it's needed to be removed.
So how far off the sidewalk will the new trees be planted then?
Varies in the location, just because it's in between that curve of Biltmore Avenue in Charlotte and the ABC parking lot. So I would assume probably more than more than 30 feet. In some places, 20 to 30 feet and maybe more.
So you have that whole like green triangle to plant. Cool.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I was before Chardon mentioned the green triangle. That's what I was going to point out. Like Lee said, we own the parcel, and so we're not bound by just trying to put trees back in the grass strip. And we did look at potential for bridging with clean stone, but with sweet gums, which that's the species of the tree that are tearing up the sidewalk. If you've been to the site and can see it, it's illuminating. We really don't have the option to do bridging without just having to come back and trying to do it again, and then eventually having the sidewalk being several inches higher than all the surrounding everything. But yeah, we have tons of space in the middle and around the building, so we've got quite a nice big clean slate to work with. Grow some big trees and not try and stuff them into places they don't fit.
Great. Well, thanks for the update and thanks for replanting. It sounds like a good plan. So, anything else? Thank you. So then I guess, Nancy, now might be a time for the urban forester update.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Any questions on the report before we dive in? All right. So I'd like to introduce you to Keith Aiken, who will be starting as the city's urban forester on March 20th. Welcome. Keith, do you have anything to add to?
Yeah, sure. Once again, thank you all. This has been a long time coming for me. I remember looking at this, hoping that there would be an urban forester at some time in the city since I first came here back in the late 90s. So this has been a long time coming. Finally glad it's here, and I'm super excited that it's me. And that I will get to serve the city in the different capacity. I've been in Parks and Rec since 2015, and forestry has always been part of my heart, my focus, I'm just super pumped about getting ready and getting started and supporting the needs of the citizens of Asheville.
Yay! Well, I'll say that, I don't know, I won't speak for everybody, but we're excited. So thank you. And once you're officially in position, I would love to get together and, talk about where we can go as a team. But thank you. Patrick, go ahead.
Yes, welcome, Keith. We've been working on arriving at this moment now for at least 4 years. A lot of people have put a tremendous amount of work and effort into getting you here, and we really appreciate you being here and excited for you to get started in the job. I do have a question. Perhaps this would be more directed to Nancy, but in terms of where the urban forester is going to fit in the departments or sort of table of organization, where does that stand?
Currently, he's under me and Chris Collins in the zoning site division of DSD. And that's where he's going to live unless there's other changes that his role is going to be more of an advisory role for the planners and support of the team in enacting the tree canopy ordinance, questions about the steep slopes, that sort of thing. And I know we have some work already that's, review of the Article 19 and landscaping to have him put some of his expertise and insight into those 2 chapters that we're currently looking at updates for. So, and that y'all will be part of those discussions as well. From, I think, everything that, I mean, I know you will for Article 19, but from what Padilla has stated about Chapter 11 as well.
And I assume that there would be coordination with Public Works and specifically Mark Foster, as well as Recs and Parks, in terms of any issues related to trees on recreational properties.
So we're going to work to help define that, to make sure everybody's on the same page and on board with the same things. I do know as part of some of the fee in lieu conversations and setting up how the fee in lieu works is part of that discussion of bringing in those other departments, but as well as we kind of have always seen the urban forester in that advisory role, being an advisor, being a resource for every department that that needs some extra, extra set of eyes on those type of things, whether it's capital improvement or Parks and Rec, or Mark handles his stuff fairly well, though I don't know, but I think some of that is still a little bit to be defined and laid out exactly how that works. But I think when there's opportunities for trainings and other things, I think we all try and do send those things out cross departmentally, because I know Chad Bandy and Streets and stuff have always sent us stuff about ADA and other things. So because there is so much crossover with some of the work that we do. So, and
finally, in relation to the TRC, the Technical Review Committee, will we continue to have a representative from the UFC on that committee, or will that function be taken over by the urban forester?
I am not sure, 100% sure about that one. Chris, do we have an answer, Miss TRC coordinator? Do we have an answer on that, or are we is that for further discussion? I know that would be an ordinance change. But
it would be an ordinance change, and it is for further discussion, probably further discussion with this group. No changes proposed right now. But I will say it's the only instance of a non-staff member being on that TRC report, other than MSD and other technical review staff. So it's a discussion I'd like to have with this group, but it's not an immediate need.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Sharon.
Welcome, Keith. We're glad to have you. Which was my question on TRC. Chris, would that be or Nancy, is that a text amendment change as opposed to a full ordinance change?
I think that can be done as a text amendment.
Okay. I think I'm up in, my term is up in December, and I know it took me, or it's still taking me, being on TRC, to learn all the nuances, as you know, Nancy, because I send you a bazillion emails on it. There's a big learning curve in there if you're not a planner by nature to know that. So I would suspect whoever is going to volunteer for this, that nobody do it, but it needs to be done, that there would be me involved with what I've learned in my knowledge that I've gotten as a volunteer, and not having any planning experience whatsoever, so that we don't start with somebody brand new when my term is up, and then they have to go over and drive you guys nuts with everything I've already learned. They can drive you nuts with the things that they've got. Do you understand what I'm saying? So somehow we're going to have to cross-pollinate between now and December when my term is up, is what I'm saying. So whether that's Keith or somebody else, that's going to take this over, so it doesn't happen like it happened to me. Chad was a great help in the beginning, and then everybody else has stepped in. So I'm just making a statement on that point.
All right, thank you. I'm just making a note that we'll need to come back to TRC in future meetings and make sure that we are prepared for whatever the transition away from Sharon looks like as we get to that point. So, all right, great. Anybody else? Again, welcome, Keith. We're so happy that you're on board, and we'll touch base. So,
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right. That brings us to old business with our working group updates. So starting with the budget request working group, Dawn, do you want to give us an update? Or I have on here a recommendation, but I feel like we did that last month. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I don't have an update that we made that recommendation.
Okay. Cecil?
Yeah, I do have a note here. In that proposal, in the situation section, in the 4th paragraph, it says unshaded trees require repaving. It should be unshaded streets require repaving. We don't pave trees too often.
Sorry, Cecil. I know you made that pointed that out before. I need to change that.
Yeah.
Will do.
Thank you. So since the budget has started and City Council has started taking public comment, again, I would just like to encourage this group to get the word out, to get the input into City Council now to get this on the budget. So Kim, I'll let you fill us in on that.
Thank you so much. Just a couple quick updates. The city's budget survey. This is the first time we've done something like this so early. It's available in English, Spanish, Russian, and Ukrainian. And we did extend the deadline to March 10th. So folks can fill that out on the city's website at ashevillennc.gov before this Friday. There are a number of questions, but don't forget to fill in the last part. All the way at the bottom is a blank field where you can talk about what you would hope we would prioritize on a more personal and direct level instead of, or in addition to simply filling out the questionnaire. So that's not to be missed. Also, I wanted to give an update from our council budget retreat, which we just had this past Thursday and Friday. The good news is it does appear that there is a majority, at minimum, support for funding an urban forestry master plan. And I know that's something this group has worked on for a really long time, as well as members of the community. So the next steps from our retreat is we kept and updated a few of the strategic priorities, which include reparations, reimagining public safety, core services, affordable housing, homelessness response, and climate and neighborhood resilience. And so what we did by keeping and updating those priorities was we got into some more specifics on the details of the goals. So staff will take those goal recommendations and bring back to us at our March 14th budget work session for council some recommendations about what the budget impact on those items will be, and so what some next steps can look like, what to expect. So we have an opportunity to kind of thread the needle on urban forestry master plan funding and staffing support with Keith's new role by weaving in the budget survey, but also the recommendations that this committee has made. So once again, the budget survey runs through the Friday, March 10th. And then stay tuned for the council budget work session where we're going to follow up on the retreat, which included underneath climate and neighborhood resilience and urban forestry master plan.
Well, that is great news. I plan to personally send emails to all the city council members, and I would encourage anyone who does so to really stress the climate and neighborhood resilience piece so that we're tying in our request with what city council has said is a priority. So perfect. Okay, well, that's wonderful. And if we can get that done this year with an urban forester on staff, we're really poised to make some strides. Very exciting. Any other thoughts or questions on budget?
All right. Oh, just one other follow-up thing I would say. It's not lost on me that members of this group and people who have come before this group and in this group have been advocating for this work for a long time. And it just shows me the value of our advisory boards. So I just wanted to say from my position, I really appreciate the work that y'all do, and thank you.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you being our liaison and getting our message up to the council. We appreciate that. All right. Next is the policy working group. So Patrick?
Yeah, Madam Chair, do you mind if I flip the rotation of the report?
No, go ahead, whatever order you like.
Okay. So I'm going to start with section 719. I reported the last time that we had a very productive meeting with Chris Collins and his staff on the proposed UDO amendments to 719. They were going to work on some language and get back to us, so we're still waiting for that language to come back to us. And I think it would probably be prudent at that time for the policy working group to invite the new urban forester to join us and both bring him up to speed as well as any advice that he might want to give us on that subject. On chapter 20, because of a lot of scheduling conflicts, our review of the document that was provided by Public Works staff has taken a while. Ed did a comparison analysis of what we proposed and what staff sent us. It was a very labor-intensive effort on his part, and I really appreciate him taking the time and energy to do that. We have a meeting of the policy working group scheduled for Monday to go over that analysis and prepare a response, and then schedule a meeting with Public Works staff, Mark Foster, and whoever he wants to bring in to go over the Chapter 20 revisions and see if we can come to an agreement on those. I think our preferred approach would be to take the UDO amendments to 719, the Tree Canopy Preservation Ordinance, and the UDO changes in Chapter 20 forward simultaneously, because we think there's an interconnection between the two. I don't know if Ed would like to say anything more about his analysis, or just wait until after the policy working group has met and discussed. Ed?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I think it's best if we wait until after the working group is met to discuss a little bit, and then we can talk about it some more. The other thing is the revision of the landscape standards. I don't know if that's on your agenda or not.
It is.
Okay, well, I'll let you continue then.
No, you go ahead. I was going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, that group met again, and we're really working on some fine detail with that. And I think that the work of that committee is pretty much done. There's a few things that have to be reconciled with Chapter 719. So I've been encouraging Vidila to talk to Chris Collins about some of those issues. But hopefully that work is done, and I think that the revision of the landscape standards is going to make a remarkable difference on the ground going forward once it's adopted in terms of the survival of trees that are planted as part of the building construction land development process. And anyway, I think it's going to make a big difference in the long run. hopefully all three of these revisions can go forward at the same time in a single package, since we're sort of moving towards this harmonic convergence of completion on all three of them. So probably ready for prime time by later this spring or early summer.
I agree. I'm hopeful that these can all go together. Patrick, did you have anything else?
Nope, that's the end of the update from the policy working group. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions from anyone on the policy side? The one thing I wanted to point out is we are due for a update to the canopy cover study. So I don't know if Chris or Nancy, if that's on anyone's radar to get that an update on that.
Yeah, I can kind of update you on where we are and looking at that right now. We have attained, I mentioned before to at least the policy working group, maybe the whole group, that we've gotten involved with Google's Environmental Insights Explorer, which is doing some high resolution analysis on tree canopy in the community. And now just recently we've gotten access to that raw data. So Vidila Safica and myself are currently involved in an analysis of that data to find out what our confidence level and the fidelity of that data is. Because if we were able to use that, it would be a way of having much more frequent updates to our tree canopy numbers, and a really responsible use of resources, because the cost would be extremely low. Actually, there is no cost other than staff analysis time to it. So we're working through that right now, and we'll make sure and report back on the findings of if that data is going to be good enough or not.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you. I see Chad had a hand up.
Yeah. Chris, I just wanted to ask you about that since I was involved in the last canopy study that we did. And I think you answered my question. Yeah, it's possible that staff is going to be able to analyze that raw data to get various coverage. And of course, we have the older raw data from the last time where we could compare changes or anything. So am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, 100%. That is exactly it. The data they're giving us is high res, in some cases higher res than some of the flaggers from before. And as long as it appears to be that the two methodologies are not conflicting and we're not getting any wildly different numbers, then yeah, we'd have that data at our fingertips and updated periodically.
And that's awesome, because, I mean, for those of you all that were around, big picture, it's not a massive number, but the last one was about $30,000. We did get a $10,000 grant, but I think I probably put $20,000 work into getting that grant, but so that's neither here nor there. But I mean, that is a savings, and, also basically at your fingertips versus waiting on a consultant that at the end of the day, I wasn't real happy with last time. So that's awesome to hear that may be becoming a possibility.
We've got our fingers crossed. We'll see. Yeah.
Thank you. Sharon?
Yeah, which brings me to the question, is it fine-tuned enough? My concern has always been what we're losing as opposed to what we're gaining. And would that type of reporting give us that finite amount from above of what our percentage of loss has been? My concern has always been we're showing what we're putting in, but we're not showing what we're losing. And so if we're going to have that data overhead, is it going to be that, Ed would have the correct terminology, finite enough so that we know what that is year by year?
The easy answer on staff's end is yes. We should just be able to compare not just total loss, but loss by census tract and area of the city by comparing previous years or previous reporting periods of data. So,
well, and the advantage of having it sort of at our fingertips like that is you could take almost any point in time for comparison instead of having to rely on a third party to give you that data. So that's good. Thanks, Chad. Thanks for being here. All right. Any other questions for Chris? Thank you. It was on my mind about where we were at with the canopy study. So keep us posted. Thank you. All right. So that brings us to the Urban Forest Master Plan and Fee in Lieu Working Group. We haven't done much on the master plan part. We're waiting, obviously, hopefully to get it funded. We already have a scope of work ready, so we can talk with Keith about that as well. But Fee in Lieu did meet. And so Zoe, did you want to give us an update on that?
Yes, we met a couple of times to discuss coming up with the framework for managing fee in lieu. And we produced a document for review by the by all the members of the Urban Forestry Commission. Basically, it looks at what kinds of projects might be funded from fee in lieu, questions to prioritize that funding, and then a sort of a suggestion about how that could be administered and who could possibly make those decisions.
And so that document is attached in the agenda and documents section in the Google Drive. So hopefully everybody had a chance to take a look at it. Zoe and Karen and I put this together. And the basic thoughts, what we know from the ordinance is that if a project cannot preserve or plant, then the last option is to pay into the fee in lieu. So that's that money that's been collected. When it comes to being spent, the restriction is that the funds have to be spent within the overlay district they were collected in. Those are those broad districts, the central business district, urban and suburban. And you can see those breakdowns on the tree canopy ordinance report. The only other stipulations when the ordinance was written is that the funds have to be used to improve and enhance tree canopy, which obviously makes sense. We're losing canopy. The goal would be to in some way bring that back. And it is still somewhat broad. Projects can include obviously tree planting, but also things like education, adding funds to capital improvement projects like Silvacells and things like that. So that's where we came up with again, this is a proposed project list. This is nothing set in stone by any means at this point, but we came up with tree planting on public land, tree planting on private land, community engagement and education, land acquisition, capital improvement specific to trees and forests, and other special projects specific to urban forest trees and tree canopy protection. So the last one is kind of the catch-all of other projects that we may not be thinking of off the top. And so our envisioning would be that either city folks or even people in the community would create proposals for requesting the funds, and that this would be a framework for some sort of committee, probably consisting of city staff, possibly city council, to approve or not those requests for funding. And then we also came up with just some questions that would be to help prioritize projects, things like how does it benefit the urban forest? How does it address canopy loss? Does it include issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion, educate the public, enhance other parts of the urban forest like water quality, habitat, and human health, and protect or enhance any protected species habitat. So again, that's just what we came up with. Hopefully you can see it. But for now, we just wanted to bring it to this group and open it up for discussion, ideas. What did we miss, or what are you seeing that you like or don't like about this? And again, this is just a proposal. As a group, we are not going to be the ones finalizing any of these decisions. We just wanted to have something to move up the ladder to help get this process going. So Cecil?
Yeah, I thought the document was pretty useful. I appreciated the work that went into it and the ideas that you put into there. One of the things that occurred to me, I don't know that we've discussed it. We probably have in the past, but how are the fee in lieu funds, how do they break down? It seems like downtown is probably one of the hardest places to meet the requirements. And I'm thinking that maybe more of the money ends up there in the downtown pot versus the urban and suburban. Well, that's the thing I wonder about. And then I wonder if some of it's for education, can education go beyond the boundaries of each district?
Yeah, good point. So first of all, if you're able to see the agenda, we have the table that has the the funds. So you can see that currently in the CBD bucket, there's about 29,000. In the urban, about 340,000, and suburban, about 38,000. And so it really just depends on what projects pop up in what places. So that big suburban chunk was obviously a large project that was not able to meet protection or planting standards, so they ended up having to pay a big chunk. But that easily could have been a project somewhere else. But because the landscape requirements are different in different areas too, it changes, how much they have to pay, because there may not be a requirement for as much to begin with, if that makes sense.
Right.
So again, it's going to be something that just varies. I think it'll take us years to really understand, in some way to predict how it might be. But to your second point, so say you have a project that is maybe not specific to one area or includes pieces of many areas, then whatever amount you approve needs to be equally taken from each of the three categories.
Okay.
So like say you want $10,000, or say, let me make it easier, $9,000 for some sort of education project. It would have to be $3,000 from each. What difference is that? Yeah, three.
Okay. Thanks. I really want to get my head around it. And
Right. And that's to say that there's not a focus area for that education. So if there is one, like an educational component where there is a focus or a stakeholder group or a target area, that the work, then it does look at looking at those funds that would support it from whatever zoning districts or future land use mapping districts or resource management districts. That's what they're called. Sorry.
So it can be specific to one, but if it is broad, it has to be equal for each.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, we, at least at the group, as we were talking, the ideal projects would literally put canopy back in. I think planting and land acquisition are really the top priorities. But again, since I don't get to ultimately make the call, I wanted to make sure there was something in the framework that helped prioritize canopy as the overall goal. But Sharon?
Yeah, I can't remember. Are our resource management districts delineated specifically on a map so we know where one resource management overlay butts right up to another one, so we don't have the open space fee in lieu issue that we have where we've got ambiguity between districts?
I believe so. Yeah, it is clearly mapped on the GIS with the city. And another piece of that, this was a while back, even a year ago, I was talking to Chris Collins, that with the mapping, there's other data available. So as we're asking the questions about how does a project influence canopy loss or equity, we can add to the map layers census data and canopy cover and heat island. These different pieces of information that we already have are already built into those maps. So if you're looking at a project in a specific location, you can answer those questions using the map overlays, to gather more information. So there's a lot of data that's available. Patrick?
Yeah, stepping back to the educational component for a second, could those funds be used to collaborate with nonprofits on educational?
I would imagine, because these are city funds, I imagine that primarily it's going to be city using the funds as well. However, like if a nonprofit partner wanted to come in and apply for, collaboration and funding, then that would be, I think, an appropriate use of the funds as well. But yeah, I would imagine that most outside requests for funds would most likely be nonprofits. There's a chance there could be a neighborhood group or something like that. But I imagine it's mostly going to be more of that nonprofit organization level request. But again, it's pretty broad the way it's written in the ordinance. And that's why we wanted to kind of get some of these ideas down on paper to imagine how it might work.
I think that would be, for example, a great opportunity to collaborate with someone like Asheville Greenworks, who's done a lot of educational work within the communities.
Absolutely. I agree. All right. Any other thoughts? Our thought, the working group, was to have this document or some final version of it that we could then pass up as a recommendation to City Council. So I guess what I would propose is over the next month, if you see anything you want to add, subtract, or change on this, we can work on it in the Google Drive and have a recommendation for next month if that is agreeable. All right, cool. Well, if you think of anything, let us know. But I want to say special thanks to Karen and particularly Zoe for really spearheading this. It's been on my mind a long time, but Zoe actually made us sit down and get it done. So thank you so much. All right. So next is the appropriate species list. Have y'all had a chance to meet or chat on that?
So Sharon and I have been chatting, and we've been working on lining up a meeting with the folks at Living Roofs to talk about, just to see what they're doing. And there's such a great opportunity for native grasses and other plants on roofs, and to learn more about how we can advocate for that. I'd love to find a way to connect the dots between public will, because there's definitely a lot of enthusiasm for Living Roofs, and how to incentivize that with policy, because it seems like right now I don't think it gets it's not really considered any credit towards anything, is it? The Living Roofs, is my understanding correct on that?
It provides credit for open space, I believe.
For open space, okay. All right. Well, that counts for something. I'd love to just, continue working on making that even more appealing for people to do. And even for alternative compliance, I was thinking we had a situation with a planter that maybe we could create an alternative compliance where it could be on a rooftop somehow. I don't know what the possibilities are, but I feel like every little bit helps and could create some inspiration for other folks to maybe consider doing the same thing. So Sharon, do you have something that you want to add?
No, other than when we were working on open space, we have the amenity part of it, which means that people can actually come and enjoy a space that is a living roof, as opposed to me. My problem is a bunch of pots with some plants in them sitting on a roof, and we call that open space and an amenity. I would rather see something more developed out, like a living roof. But that would mean changes in ordinances and that type of thing. But it's a goal to head towards. If we're going to use balconies as open space, and we're going to use roofs as an open space, then they may as well benefit our environment in one form or another, or even the public, because some of these roofs are private, and they're only private to whoever is there, and not to anybody to come off the street. So we've got a whole lot of definitions of open space and how it's applied. So I think we're working on the applicability of open space, the new one, and then somewhere down the line, some future UFC group will dice it up even further and make it more what I call user-friendly, when we know where the pitfalls are. But right now, as Nancy stated in an email and I sent to you, Karen, it doesn't do anything for stormwater because it doesn't filter out impurities that get fed into a pipe, like a storm drain that runs straight into our pipe and goes straight to either the river or to a filtration plant. But I do know from working on this in California that there are some plants that you can plant, like bamboo, that actually do filter. And there's other types of plants like birches, which you can't do on a roof because you've got space issues. But there are plants that will filter, that are grasses, that maybe somewhere down the line we can get a smart group of people and have it apply as a stormwater conveyance as opposed to now. And there's Ms. Nancy.
So it receives rainwater. It's not treating road water runoff and other mechanisms. And in all honesty, those are decisions by the stormwater administrator and by the state. And this is what the state has provided us. They do provide a lot of other, benefits. that are sustainable benefits. It's just that they don't fit into our stormwater regulations well enough that it's an incentive for people to utilize unless they're doing it for other reasons, right? Like there's some detention that occurs on them, but that's really about it. And it's not enough to actually meet the requirements. So they still got to do other things. And so to put the roof in the post-construction requirements, which is annual reporting and annual inspections and city required inspections as well, the cost doesn't really break down for a developer to do it for stormwater requirements. There are a number of other reasons why developers have and are choosing to do these in some other, and I think I know of like 3, maybe 4 in the city limits that have been fairly recent, but that's just, where it is from a stormwater requirement standpoint. There are 1,000 other, there's a number of other sustainable reasons that are different from the stormwater. So, sorry.
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you.
I also want to mention real quick that Karen has been facilitating working with natives, and we've been talking about what natives would be applicable as street trees. And because there's not a lot for many reasons. And that's where people like Chardin and his experience could come up with, we could use help with some trees that are, we could use as pollinators and natives as opposed to, cultivated species that are on everybody's CAD, as we mentioned before. A is Acer, and we got a whole load of Acers. When it'd be nice to use more service berries or other natives that are could be used as street trees. I am just not that familiar with our wide range of natives that could be. We'd have to go to designers and say, hey, could you add these names of these species into your CAD? So when you spit out something that's X amount of size, of height and width, that you've also got native species that come out as opposed to the tried and true. And I think that's what Karen and I have been working on. And she's been talking a lot more tree people than I have about what may and may not work. But we're trying to include more natives in our recommended species list.
Perfect. And I believe, Chardon, you requested to be on the group. I added your name on there, right? Do you want to be on it? Okay. So y'all can coordinate together. Yeah. So he's happy
I was just realizing, I was like, I hope I didn't miss an email that you guys were reaching out to me. But yeah, I'd like to be on my list.
Okay. So let's work him in there. Because like you said, yes, we have some expertise we might be able to tap to help with that. All right. Cecil?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject 2 things. One is probably the single most maddening thing I confronted in my 8 years on city council was the hotel across from the Grove Arcade, which was allowed to count the Grove Arcade roof as part of their open space. When residents of the condominiums there can't even access it. They're not allowed to go upstairs. But somehow that was run through as fulfilling the open space requirement. I guess it lets more sunlight into the Page Avenue Valley, but it hardly accomplished anything. And the other thing I remember is, what pleased me, was that the hotel that went up next to the Ingalls on Tunnel Road, at least in the planning, I've not been there, so I don't know, but it actually has a real green roof. And it was done at the behest of the developer. I mean, they brought it to the city. There was no requirement there. I think it probably affects their cooling costs, my guess. Anyway, it'd be nice if we could encourage it, even if, as Nancy said, it doesn't fulfill stormwater requirements or anything, but the greener the roofs are, the cooler the city is.
Yes, good point. Thank you. Sharon?
The Ingalls one does not have a green roof.
The hotel?
Mm-mm. There's no green roof on it. There's no green roof on that hotel.
Really?
No.
That was part of the plan that was approved by council. That's why I say I haven't been there, so I don't.
Generally, a green roof is optional. You don't have to do it. You can approve it, but you don't necessarily have to do it. It's not part of the UDO.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. And we're actually going to talk about that issue in a moment. But I agree that green roofs are a great option. So any way that we can add incentives is good. So, all right. Anything else with the working groups? Check the working group rosters at the bottom of the agenda. Make sure that you are where you want to and need to be. And if there's any changes or issues, let me know. All right. And keep in mind that 4 is the maximum that we can have on any working group. So 4 is full. All right, that brings us back to the golf course. So like I said, it looks like Chris Corral was too busy to join us. But I wanted to keep it on the agenda because it's an ongoing project and there had been some concerns raised. So I've been communicating with Chris and I told him we'd send him a specific list of questions if we had them. But I asked about, what about the potential for trees to be removed that were not marked? And he said he's been walking every week. So he goes out, the arborist crew's out there, he's been going out and checking. And as of last Thursday on his last walk, he said only planned trees had been removed. There wasn't anything out of the plan. As far as the pruning has started. I am not an arborist, so I don't know, limbs were pruned, but whether that's good or bad, I don't know. That would have to be someone else to take a look at that. I don't know what else the questions would be. So let me know. What else do we want to ask Chris to follow up on? I don't know. I'm right here every day. The project seems to be going well, but you guys can tell me. Shardon?
I would like to ask him why there's not been a certified arborist on site every day, like he said there would be. I would also like to ask, how, if there are trees, and this is a broader question, on these big projects, and I'm not saying that it's happened here, but if there are trees that were removed that are not part of the original list, who is held accountable for that and how?
Okay, I'm just making notes. Got it. All right. Yeah, those are good questions. I will pass them along and see what we get back. Is there anything else? Again, some of the arborists will have to go take a look at the pruning and relay to me if there are questions about that. But Karen?
I just want to second that. It seems like I feel like we're doing a really good job with advocacy and initiating some policy changes, but I worry about the enforcement of the policy. And I feel like I pay attention as much as I can pretty well, and I'm still not really sure of the way that folks are held accountable if they don't follow their plans like they say they're going to. And it seems like it's really an ongoing challenge because after it happens, it's sort of a done deal, but there still should be something that can be done to prevent that from happening again, so that that idea is out there that, maybe it's not as easy to divert from the plan as people think that it could be.
Well, I will say that it would be a little different, like a development project. There are mechanisms for enforcement. City staff go out, and if there's a street tree or a protected tree on a plan, there is a process. With a city-run project, I imagine it's basically the same, but that might be where that's a little different because they're kind of policing themselves, so to speak. So I'm not exactly sure if there are differences if it's a city project, but we'll ask. But for development projects, there is a process for enforcement. Shardon?
Yeah, a couple more things. Gloria brought up, and I saw it too. I've been driving by the site. as much as I can. Trucks and equipment are compacting a lot of soil around the trees, and that was one thing that certified arborist was supposed to prevent, and that's one thing that we were told that was not going to happen. So my question to Chris is, how is that going to be remediated? And how is that going to be stopped in the immediate future, as in like this afternoon or tomorrow on the job site? And as far as the pruning, Gloria's perfectly correct in that, they're really doing a lot of harm to these trees. There's massive cuts or opening live tissue wounds. They're going to get fungal infections. They're destabilizing trees. And I think it brings up the broader question of why the city hired a landscaping company to prune mature trees. And it also brings up the question of, I was kind of brought in the middle of all this, but it seems like this project was really rushed through, and seemed like there was a public comment period, and then all of a sudden the work was being started all of a sudden. From an arborist perspective, if you do have to remove these large limbs, I think that there could have been a broader, and I say have to because I don't believe they need to be. I think there could be a broader discussion of like, what about doing that over time? Why not do that properly, over 3 or 4 years and reduce the amount of stress to those trees? Right now we have a large number of mature oaks and trees that are irreplaceable, but also irreversibly being damaged by untrained professionals. And I guess my last question for Chris, in relation to the landscaping company, I did have a question for him last time that I didn't speak up about. The owner of that landscaping company spent the week before the project started calling just about every certified arborist in town to try to get their name on the project. And my question to Chris is, why was he doing that if Gabe's name was already on the project? It's just a curiosity thing.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you. So Shona, maybe we can coordinate, since you had a lot of these questions. I just want to make sure I get them right before I send them off. So I'll be in touch with you to make sure I got everything. So, but these are good. I mean, that is why we're here, to make sure that we can provide some level of help and oversight, and particularly, can we improve the process for these projects going forward? Because this, yes, it's hopefully a kind of a one-time big thing with the golf course, but there could be something else down the line. Can we put in place any processes that would improve overall forestry for the city moving on? So hopefully somewhere where Keith can jump on in and help us with that as well. So there's someone within the city kind of being that linchpin would be ideal. Shardon?
Sorry, what it keeps popping in my head, but in relation to these trees being damaged, and they are going to get fungal infections and be destabilized, and a litany of other things by their pruning. What's the process for, as these trees decline as a result of this work? Who's being held accountable for that, and how are they going to be replaced? Like, how are we going to track this? Because it's going to be an ongoing issue for the next 10 or 15 years. And I think it's going to be important to, in respect to trying to prevent this from happening again, be able to point back to this project and say, okay, we know this is going to happen. And what do we do from here? Like, how do we replace these trees? How do we keep track of what needs to be replaced as they die from these pruning cuts?
Okay, good. Like the long-term maintenance. Got it. Patrick.
Yeah, who's providing the city oversight on this project?
Well, I mean, Chris Corll is the project manager. And I know, like you said, he visits the site at least once a week to walk with them, but obviously it's a subcontractor doing the work.
And remind me who Chris Corll is?
Chris Corll is the, I don't know his exact title, but he's with it's a division that runs all of the big facilities. I can't remember what exactly it's called. Facilities management. So like Harris Cherokee Center, McCormick Field, the golf course.
Okay. We don't know what department that lies in?
That is the department.
It is the department?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kim?
Yeah, I have the title as Director of Community and Regional Entertainment Facilities. And I just wanted to ask Amy if you would copy me as the liaison on the communications, just because I just recently asked, we're getting some public engagement around this, and it would help, I think, for ongoing public engagement if we had a most up-to-date sort of like answer for the public around some of these questions that are being asked around accountability, what happens moving forward, what if more impact is done than what was anticipated, what does replacement look like? So a lot of those questions, I think, more than just this group will need, and the public will anticipate and answer on.
Yes, of course. Good. Okay. Let's see. So I think Chardon.
With the new urban forester position, in these situations where there are things happening that were not supposed to happen, will the urban forester have the power to stop a project in its tracks? And this kind of falls in the Sycamore discussion too. How much power does the urban forester have in these kind of situations?
Well, I'll see if anybody from the city wants to bite on that one, but I would really doubt that. These projects are bigger than any single person in the city. I don't know of any single person that has the power to stop a project. Obviously, if there was a safety or, issue like that, there would be something. But again, I would really doubt that any single person in the city would have that ability. Patrick?
Could we make sure that Chris clears his decks and can appear at the next UFC meeting?
We can ask him to attend.
Yeah, I will say the Civic Center public meeting, like monthly meeting, is at the same time. So we'll check with Chris. If he can, he usually is willing to, because their meeting is a little bit before ours. So it may be later on the agenda or something that might, but just to give you the heads up for that's part of why the conflict, like he sometimes continues to have conflict there, is because the Civic Center, their monthly meeting is about the same time. So.
Okay, thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, Chardon brings up an excellent point, something that we've been grappling with for quite a while, and that is enforcement. And so I would like to get some comment or reaction from city staff about the ability to enforce our 719, whatever we come up with, Chapter 20, and the new landscaping standards, and how that may or may not relate to the urban forester. The urban forester may not have, I assume, outright enforcement responsibility, but certainly the urban forester could lend some very heavy advice on issues like this. So I would like to hear from staff.
Yeah, okay, so I can take that from a general standpoint. For articles within the UDO, so 19 and Article 11, those are enforced by our compliance officers in our compliance division. But the urban forester, much like steep slopes, is included in that as well. So, and much like kind of in that advisory role, we do see the urban forester providing some of the expertise and guidance on resolutions to some of those actions, those sorts of things. And those are development projects or projects that or areas that fall in that steep slope that has that restriction or the riparian zone or just protected trees because of the development or subdivision. So chapter 20 will be public works to enforce because they are private property, and public property, not private property. And the urban forester is more focused on that private side because we have to have division of work. If there are city projects that are required to have some of these components that are under the UDO, then they will comply and follow the compliance of the UDO and compliance officers. Did I say that well enough, Chris?
Yeah, so the only things I'll add is primary enforcement on private property will come from those compliance officers, but the urban forester will be authorized to take action as well when need be. And the only thing that Nancy didn't cover is we do have options with ongoing private projects. Again, private development projects is what I'm speaking to right now. We do have pretty broad authority from the UDO for stop work orders. So a specific question was asked, if someone's in violation, can we stop that project? The answer is yes. Again, that's for private projects, not speaking to public projects right now. That would be a different pathway.
Well, and if they're ones that are public projects that are permitted and that stop order is associated with a issue that is coming from one of those elements that is under those permits, right? So for instance, with erosion sediment control on private projects, we have those stop order work order options if people fail to come into compliance. On public projects, because public funded projects, the erosion sediment control is under the purview of the state, we don't have those options. So it does, and even though they might have a zoning permit. So different things fall out different places, but we do have stop work order authorities within our enforcement groups, whether it's a site inspector, a building inspector, or a compliance officer. Or animal services now too. So.
Well, thank you. That's helpful to know.
All right, thanks. Not sure who was next. Chardon and then Mark.
Well, Mark might answer this. With Gloria's emails, I've been under the impression that she's reached out the city many, many times with no response. And so my question is, in a situation where a homeowner has seen trees be removed without flags on them, and she believes they were not on the list because she's paying attention, where has this breakdown been? If there's a wayward contractor out there removing 30-inch trees, why has there been no response to this as far as like, hey, I'm double checking this and the trees are on the list? That's bare minimum. You know, the worst case scenario is they are removing trees that were not on the list. And we're losing these large trees. And there's been no response from the city. So I'm curious why. I guess, we have this really concerned citizen that has seen non-flag trees be removed and there's been no response.
So she's
a week, 2 weeks.
So she is sending these through the public input to Urban Forestry Commission?
I don't necessarily know the details. She sent them to the city council. She did get a response from some city department. It might have been development, that the emails have been forwarded to the appropriate parties. I think is the best thing that she got.
That's what we do. Because we can't answer the questions that she's asking because it's not a development project. So, we're forwarding to Chris Coral, the project manager. And I don't know if we forwarded on them. Mark, have we included you on those or not? But that's really all we know to do with the ones that come in through the public input.
The most recent concerns that you all have been discussing in this meeting, this stuff was not directed to me. This came to you all. Ultimately, Greg Schuler, as Public Works Director, per Chapter 20, is responsible for trees on city property. It's fairly straightforward in there. And so if we have an internal project that is off the rails in some way, then he has the authority to say, okay, we need to stop and look and see what's going on. Compaction concerns were brought to my attention in the past, and I communicated with Chris Coral saying, hey, what's going on? I'm hearing concerns that the trucks and so forth are driving around on the root systems of the trees inside the drip line. They're not supposed to be. And so he addressed that situation with the contractor, supposedly. I was also made aware through the Blue Ridge Arborists Association group text that the contractor was talking with other arborists locally, wanting to see if they would be part of the project. And, and we were speculating as to, what that meant and that kind of thing. But I also took that concern to Chris Coral and said, hey, do you know that your contractor is asking other arborists to be involved? And so whether or not I respond to something doesn't necessarily mean, I'm not taking action on it. But going forward, I'm happy to go out and take a look and see what's going on site. As far as trees being removed that supposedly weren't marked, every time that I went out in the past, what I was seeing was ribbons that had been ripped off trees and were dangling off of bushes and any, other solid object the wind could blow them onto. So the public had been involved in actively removing the markings from the trees. But because the person, Matt, who was the golf course superintendent, had been going around and, had an actual list and knew the actual trees because he'd been marking them and then remarking them and remarking them, they had a pretty good idea of what the trees were within the scope of their work, probably better than a citizen looking out their front window and seeing that there's no ribbon on a tree the day that it gets cut down. So I don't know, but happy to go take a look.
All right, thank you. Cecil?
Chardon, you haven't been here long, so you don't know about this, but I went through extreme frustration with the city a few years ago. I'm sure Sharon remembers this because she came and checked out my neighborhood when a guy across the street bought a house, had the place clear cut and bulldozed. It's a steep slope, and there was finally the city got him to agree to replant some trees. I mean, it was a forested lot, and he just wiped it out, and it caused so much erosion damage to a neighbor across the street from me. They spent about $30,000 restoring their frontage. But to my knowledge, there was no real repercussion for either the owner or the contractor who did all that damage without a permit. Enforcement has been a real problem across the street from me, and I knew who to contact about it, and nothing happened except an agreement, and he put some sticks in the ground, so there's little 2-inch trees here and there where there were 8 and 20-inch trees before he knocked it down. Sorry, just a complaint.
Thanks.
Thank you, Cecil.
Karen?
I just want to say that I appreciate that we're having this conversation, and that it sounds like first of all, I think that the community's involvement is sort of key to enforcement, and knowing how to navigate the pathway to finding the right person. And it sounds like we almost need a flow chart for, is it city property or is it private property, and who to contact from there, and so that there's sort of a chain of people, like actual people, and somebody can maybe feel a little bit more confident that they're going to get somewhere, because it feels fairly convoluted, even, for me. And I feel like, it shouldn't. So
I wonder if that could be included on the Asheville app, so that when people log into the Asheville app, they are given some kind of a flow chart, like you say.
Well, I'd say the best place to report it is in the Asheville app, and then it gets directed from there.
Sometimes that just seems really anonymous, though. And, there's a lack of accountability when it's just getting... I love that the app is there. Don't get me wrong. I think it's very useful. But I think it's also good to know the people that are maybe going to be potentially helpful along the way, so they can also be thanked. I realize that it's, potentially going to create some challenges, but they can also be thanked for helping in these situations.
Good. Thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, I know that we've had numerous discussions through the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods in regard to the Asheville apps. And while they are a handy mechanism for citizens to ask questions, file complaints, the follow-up is very spotty and really does depend on the department that those complaints get ultimately channeled to. And I do support Karen's, I think, her premise here, and that is if a citizen does have an issue and I'm talking here as a communication specialist, does have an issue and either sends it to, say, the Urban Forestry Commission or a department director or through the public access mechanism, that I would really hope that staff, even though they do respond to that and communicate with the appropriate people to resolve an issue that a citizen brings up, that communication loop gets linked back around, and that the citizen understands that staff has actually done its due diligence. And I think some of the problems that we have with community perception of, and I'm only going to talk about the city of Asheville because that's the one I'm most familiar with, is that communication loop isn't linked. And from my observations and personal experience, I think most city staff are very responsible in responding to questions, issues, complaints they receive from citizens, except that ultimately the citizen doesn't know that. So this is an issue that goes way beyond the Urban Forestry Commission, I know, but I think at some point, and I don't know if Councilwoman Roney can aid in this at all, but there does need to be a better communication response policy or system in place in the city of Asheville between city staff and the city's residents.
I hear that. Two updates from our council retreat that I can share. One is there are going to be updates to the Asheville app that are anticipated forthcoming. The second one is exactly that communication and outreach, realizing that there's going to be a digital divide if we only rely on the Asheville app, but doing an automated community outreach around important decisions like this. This kind of conversation was had at this month's meeting of the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, which just had an excellent presentation on some work that's happening to refine the guidelines for doing engagement around development in proximity to neighborhoods. And staff may be able to give a future update on that. I think we could certainly request an update to the Urban Forestry Commission to help gain a better picture of how we're communicating proactively.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good discussion. I think we can wrap that one up because we do have a couple more agenda items. But
I did go back and look at the public comment that we received for this meeting that came from a member of the public that was referenced. I did respond, but my response is specifically around, can we get an update on the current status of what's happening in the community so that everyone can be informed, including additional members of the public. And once I do have an answer, I can certainly ask for it to be shared with the Urban Forestry Commission as well as the full council.
Perfect, thank you. I think that's exactly what we were looking for too, is how can we address these specific issues, and then a lot of these issues brought forward as we move forward, these longer term issues as well. Thank you. All right. So we talked previously at a previous meeting about the missing middle housing project that is coming up. The city is doing a study on missing middle housing, and a task force was put together. We were offered a seat as the UFC on that task force. I sent out an email to see if anyone else was interested. I am personally interested in being our representative, but I wanted to just make sure I didn't receive any opposition. But if anyone else was, highly desiring that, but we also do need to select an alternate in case I'm not able to make a meeting. So I was wondering if anyone was interested in being just the alternate for that. Any volunteers?
I've been dealing with the missing middle housing issue as it relates to the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods, and my role is Vice President of Government Relations. So if nobody else has any objection, I would be the alternate.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's great. And let's, again, speak up if there's any issues. I don't think we need to vote on it, but unless there's an opposition. Okay, thanks, Patrick. You'll be the backup. I'll let Vidila know. And we'll keep you posted. Nothing's started yet with that, but obviously as it goes on, I'll report back to the group. So for new business, let's see. Let's go ahead and start with the item that we had on the agenda. So we added the Rad View lofts. That's the issue with the sycamore and the development that was threatening the sycamore that's right on the property line between a development project and private property at the Gray Eagle. And we added it on here. This is going to be pretty much the same discussion we just had. There was, and I believe you guys might have to update me because it got really confusing because the project was actually not on the books and nobody really knew what was going on for a long time. But if I'm not mistaken, it ended up being unpermitted grading that was threatening that tree. So, I mean, what do you do in that situation? And that's, I guess, kind of what we're talking about is almost a retrospective. What are the options when something like that happens? So I just wanted to open it up for discussion. I believe the tree is still standing as of right now, but likely damaged. But so any input, how do we see the UFC specifically playing a role in this kind of issue? Obviously, we offered help in terms of looking at the tree and, offering suggestions, that kind of thing. But what else could we do as a group for this kind of situation? So Sharon?
I think as my involvement in TRC, because I did review this development because it's large, and where the property was I'm going to say 3 pin numbers, but I think there's more than that involved. Where that tree sits as a boundary tree was on the Gray Eagle and then the Fingers property. And it was getting graded due to the Rad property due to stormwater. Now, my thing is if I'd have seen it on designated on a map, on the plans, then I would have questioned it. because I would have seen how it sat on the boundary, and I would have asked in my notes, what are you going to do about that tree that sits? So what we've got is we've got an issue of boundary trees do not have to be designated on a plan that I know of. Now, that may be written in some code somewhere that I'm not familiar with it. So I'm thinking if we ever get a historic trees or our large trees designated in UFC somehow, then that tree would have had to been noted. And someone like me that's sitting on TRC would have said, well, what about that large tree? Are you going to put tree protection fencing around it? Even though it's not on your property, it's going to get affected, because I will talk about boundary trees when I see them on a plan. So there's a way to tackle that in that arena. But
I got you. So
I don't know how we get about that.
Improve design standards so that things like this are actually mapped out in the original designs.
Yeah, and you'd have to be specific on it. If there's X amount of trees within X amount of feet of a boundary, then they should be noted on the plan. You know, whatever that is, you know, that criteria. I think that's how we tackle that issue. But then again, then there's the plans that don't go through TRC, you know,
or
that
get
kind of
changed
problem.
at some point along the line. All right. Any other thoughts on this issue? Just wanted to open it up. Go ahead, Karen.
I mean, until we're able to update those standards, can we just ask each time, are there any boundary trees that, should be considered? No, we can't do that.
That's
they wouldn't.
Yeah, it's cumbersome. I will only ask boundary trees when the levels of disturbance are marked out. Again, you'll have something like a CZ that comes through that, and I'll talk about that later, where you don't have to have those specifics yet. They come down the road. So this one was basically all the way around. I am going to stick my neck out and say it was the inspectors that were out there that didn't pay attention to the grading that was outside the limits of disturbance, and it wasn't called out. And that's my opinion on it. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's my take on it.
All right, thanks. Sharon?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe Patrick can answer this a little bit better than I can, but is this tree, now that it's gonna die, they removed half the canopy and, graded right up to the trunk. Is there any recompensance in this situation that is that falls under the new policies that we're working on?
You mean in terms of compensation? Is that
not necessarily compensation, but with the canopy loss figures and replacement, trying to remember what the word is, but we have those classifications of trees, and if one gets removed, then X amount has to be replaced along those lines. It kind of goes into the heritage tree territory.
Well, I think the issue was brought up at the last meeting, and I believe that Nancy said that this project did fall under the tree canopy preservation ordinance, and they must follow that ordinance. So that's the only thing I can think of. No, Sharon?
Right.
No, it's a private tree. It's a boundary tree. If there was something like that, it'd be a lawsuit from one party to the other. You killed my tree. And then it would be one of those issues. This was a whole different PIN number that was not involved in any of our UDO requirements, 711.3 or 719. This was strictly a private boundary tree that got graded improperly.
And I believe the property owners are talking, like it's not antagonistic at this point. So I believe there might be something that, again, that they can work out, but it would be a private.
It's civil
conversation. Yeah, it's just with them.
It's a whole. I didn't mean lawsuit, but I'm just saying that. Yeah,
it's not under
it's a civil problem and not under our ordinance issues that we would have because of the PIN numbers involved.
But the tree was subject to the grading protection, correct?
No, it was just over. Yes, it was graded in an area it shouldn't have been graded. But then that again is that is just in an ordinance that says you cannot grade over a certain area without a permit. So therefore, part of the civil issue may or may not be you graded when you shouldn't have. But I do know from my own perspective, looking at it, is that they needed to grade a certain area because of the stormwater. Now, would they have asked the property owner going, hey, we need to grade this because of our stormwater, existing stormwater issues we've got, and we need to take it over this way. And a property owner would have said, yeah, go ahead and do it. And I'm assuming that's kind of what happened with this because it really should have been part of the grading of the original project when you look at it. But I never saw the existing grade, and that'd be a Nancy thing. And she always is good at explaining this.
Oh, no, it is part of the grading plan. Like the silt fence on the development plans is right on that property line. And it's because there's a building with a stormwater drain next to said building as part of the development. So, I mean, and it is one of those things where silt fence can be, because it's on the property line and it's real, it's hard. It's not super clear if you're not used to looking at these plans. Like that's, I'm going to the plans now to go, I'm looking for it. So that's why it sticks out to me more. But I mean, it is a boundary tree. We don't have regulations around boundary trees. And North Carolina is very specific about what we can and cannot require on and off properties as part of developments. So that's something that when, as we look at these things, we're going to want to have legal intently involved. But ultimately, this turns out to be a civil matter at this point. I don't know when this set of plans came in, Sharon, that has this stuff on it. I think it might have been final TRC, but it might not have. That's that. I haven't checked to see if this amount of detail was in the plan sets that you were sent. And that's where it may not have been, because if we have one of the TRCs that gets approved with conditions, and then some of those conditions are more detail on this, that, or the other, and it just comes back as a staff review to make sure that those things are identified and dealt with, then you may not have seen it.
Yeah, because I remember you saying there was a dot, but there wasn't. Also, the silk fence was a good 20 feet away from the actual, because I walked the job, and and so I saw where the silk fence was and location. I've got pictures of it, but it doesn't matter because I knew it needed to be graded when you looked at the stormwater plan. So regardless of whether that PIN number was involved in the development or not, they were going to have to grade it for the stormwater. But the silk fence was on the other side of it. But that building right there, as Chardon stated, was going to impact that, whether it was on that other side of the PIN or not. So no matter what, that tree was going to be impacted from that. So yeah, there was a little ambiguity on that.
Yeah, because the building is about 10 feet from the property line as well. So that's
yeah.
And they did have some additional work on the adjacent property that they have their access through, that was actually done maybe previously, because they they redid some of the additional giant storm drain that carries the stream through the adjacent property. They did that not as part of this project, but as part of the adjacent project that was already replacing that 72-inch storm drain.
Thanks.
So,
Which also brings me looking it up on Excel, looking for that PIN number and any work that was done on that property. And I don't know whether everything is getting posted on Excel, but there was nothing at all posted on that PIN number for any work being done. So I just went to the place that the city's going through so many changes. They just hadn't had a chance to post a lot of them.
No, the key in Acela, look at the address or the street and then go try and find the address. Some things don't pull very well. One of those is pins.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That'll help me. Thank you.
Chardon?
Yeah, Nancy, I wanted to get clear on something that you mentioned. Like, is the city restricted by state law on enforcement of boundary tree protection?
I don't know. I do not know. That's why I need legal. I don't know.
We're restricted in a lot of ways because we're not allowed to make rules on private property, basically, unless they meet certain criteria.
Right. Unless we have authority that is provided from the state. That's the Weary Dillon's full state. That's what that means. Is the general legislature provides us the authority. Some things like for erosion control and offsite sedimentation, that's one thing that lives in a 1972 law that now applies within some of our standards. But there is it's just, I know that there's restrictions around offsite improvements based on a development. I don't know how that impacts boundary trees, any of that. I know from a little bit of conversation with Ed that it can get sticky, which is when we start having these conversations, I just want legal to be informed and to help guide us so that we don't do so, we stay within the bounds of the authority that we have. That's really it. Because,
All right. And actually, this topic ties in. I want to get to our last bit here while we have a little bit of time. So the item that was added was to talk about the Aspire development. This is in conceptual phase right now, but it's come through TRC. So Sharon wanted to give us an update, or it's coming to. I don't know if it's been through yet.
I saw it Monday. I'm going to try to make this quick, and as you all know, I'm not quick. It's 10.5 acres. It's the First Baptist Church, if everybody's aware of it. I'm going to read the boundaries. The site is bound on Charlotte Street to the east, College Street on the south, Oak Woodfin to the southwest, Central Avenue to the west, and I-240 east off-ramp to the north. It is One Oak all the way to the Y. And I don't know, and Nancy will probably can correct me in this. I've never seen anything come through like this to the city. It is a CZ, but it's called a conceptual master plan. And what they're going to do is they gave a plan of a rendering of what with some trees and some green space and where the hotel and their low-cost housing that they're proposing and parking in a parking garage and some green spaces, but it's not an indication of what it's really going to look like. And it's as a CZ, you don't have to have a specific rendering of what a project looks like as a CZ as it goes through the process. And then as it goes through the processes, it'll come back through TRC and I will see more specifics on it. Now, what the developers have been doing, which has been good, is they'll call out the trees of what's going to be saved, what's going to be existing, and generally what it's going to look like. And on this, what they're doing is they're presenting the whole conceptual master plan to the city in this rendering. And then once that's approved as a CZ, they're going to divide it up into level 2s. so that they're going to do it in 3 phases from, if I remember correctly, so that each phase of this will not have to go back to council. Once a CZ is approved, then they'll divide it up and everything will be a level 2, and then everything will go through in their phases as a level 2. What happened with me is that I know there's a lot of trees on that site. Some of them were planted as vehicle use, street trees. There's at 10 acres, I'm gonna hasten to guess and say it's about 20% treed. And some of these trees are very large. They're street trees. I'm going to call them building impact trees because they look like they were planted under a building impact or some sort of ordinance like that, and they're large. Unfortunately, I can't tell what type of trees they are because I'm not Chardon or Ed. They don't have any leaves on them yet, but I'm guessing a lot of them are maples because they're start now coming out, and I can recognize when a maple comes out. So I'm going to say there's probably over 100 trees that are going to be impacted by this. And because I did not know what they're going to do with the existing trees at TRC, I asked, we would like to see what trees. I'm getting comments from certain members in the community asking me, well, what's going to happen with these trees? And my response has been, I don't know, because the plan I'm getting doesn't designate what's coming out, what's going in. So a CZ will allow for that, but and so at TRC, I said they're going to have a special virtual meeting before they meet for the Downtown Review Committee on March 23rd, and I requested for them to give me some kind of idea of what they're going to do with the existing trees, because I did say that I know that most of those interior trees are not going to make it through this development because it's a massive development. And there is no way with the amount of clearing and building they're going to do that any of these interior trees are going to be saved. And I wanted to know if any of the exterior, if the street trees were going to be saved, and if they were with the development, what that was going to look like. They are going to be, because it's a CBD, Central Business District, they're not required to do building impact. They are required to do street trees, one every 40 foot on center. And they are required to do a canopy requirement, which I'm guessing is going to be 10%. So they did, with Chris Collins' help and Will Palmquist told them the more trees that they save, the less fee in lieu they'll have to pay. So they did agree to submit to through the TRC portal a concept of what trees that they're planning on saving with this development. Which brings me to the question of when we've got CZs going through, or if we're going to have these huge developments and they're going to come through as a conceptual master plan and then divided up, then we as Urban Forestry Commission and the community should be aware when we've got old, big canopied trees, what's going to happen with these trees, and have an idea. Because when they brought this to Easton Valley to talk to us about it, I asked the same questions I asked them at TRC. This is not what it's going to look like. This is conceptual. What's it really going to look like? And they said to me, well, we're working on that. So it's a part and parcel how the city's accepting certain designs to come through, and part of us to request that we get a little more information before something goes through its processes. So that's the compact version of it.
All right, thank you. I just want to clarify real quick, CZ is conditional zoning, which has different rules than standard development. So, Chris?
Hey, I have to leave you guys for 3 p.m., but I just wanted to add a couple of notes to what Sharon said. Our conditional zoning checklist doesn't actually require that they show us compliance with tree canopy or detailed landscape plans on any conditional zoning application right now. But a lot of them do anyway. So just kind of throwing that out there. it is meant to be a conceptual plan until council approves it. And then everything that comes in after that on the detailed plan is required to meet two things: that master plan that's been approved by council and the ordinance that goes along with it, and UDO like everything else. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell for that. Just adding to what Sharon said. Sharon had read on this one is very, very large. So it's really got a lot of people's attention, and it does have a large impact. So we're working through it. They seem willing to provide details as we ask, as commissions, staff, everybody asks for said details. But it's going to be kind of a detailed building experience as we get through the various bodies that need to look at this. But again, I hate to have to leave you guys. I do have a 3 o'clock meeting as well. But I did want to add that.
Yeah, and I will say this one is a little, because of its phasing into, it is a little bit, it's more conceptual than our typical conceptual. It's more of that massing, and although we are asking for some specifics within that TRC and the CZ requirements for, you know, heights and other things and spacings, and so and I just knowing the processes that this is going to go through P&Z and the downtown review and other things, that those boards will also have their comments that I think will help build this conditional zoning out. And then once, like once that goes through, the level 2 will come through like they usually do, where we will get that final, we'll get that detailed information as part of that submittal of each phase. But I think they will have to show and designate their phases as part of the CZ. So, but do, you know, participate as citizenry can within those committees and the public meetings that they're willing to have with us too. So it's a large project.
Thank you. Shardon?
Huge.
Well, I'll just say quickly, Sharon, thanks for bringing this to our attention. And I think that it's a great example of, you know, what can happen when we involve planting around trees from the very beginning. You know, those oaks, at least from my memory, on Charlotte Street, I mean, they're pin oaks, and they're one of the rarely, you know, well-planted trees that is in the city. You know, they have really nice root collars, they have plenty of soil space. And I think that the sooner that we can bring attention to the fact that they're really valuable and should be retained, the sooner that can be implemented into the planning process. It's a big thing that I see as an arborist. You know, I'm the most effective arborist as far as tree preservation if I'm started in the project before the house is even sited. So it's kind of the same principle here. So thank you.
Thanks. And not to put too much on Keith before you even start, but as we imagined the urban forester position, you know, for the past several years, this is one of those key places that we're hoping that the urban forester be involved. Projects like this, where it really, you know, we can't put everything on a volunteer to keep tabs on that all the way through. So a heads up that is definitely a piece that we envisioned the urban forester being involved with, being at that city level to assist with that planning piece. So again, I know you're not officially in there yet, but heads up on that one.
That's all right. I'm happy to do it, and you know, I getting an inventory done of, you know, all our street trees is, of course, where we need to start, so that we have information on these trees, so that we're not trying to guess what they are and, you know, how old they are and that sort of thing. So that's, you know, obviously one of my strong points. So
absolutely, thank you. Agreed. All right, Sharon.
Yeah, what I've learned with working with Ed is that we have end-of-life trees, and we have some end-of-life trees there. So they're not going to take any kind of construction around them at all, period. And so then we have to, as an Urban Forestry Commission, take a look at the reality of we have end-of-life trees, and it may be for the future, like on Vermont Street that we're planting for. on developments like this. And we try to keep as much canopy we can with trees that are going to be able to survive this. But then there's the reality of these trees aren't going to survive this. And therefore, we need to put something in, as Keith said, that's a decent tree and not a darn forest pansy, you know, and a real, what I call a real tree that is going to do its job and give the canopy the size, because a lot of commercial businesses do not want to put a tree in that's going to block their business, because they'll yell at me, well, I can't see my sign. Can't you take that tree down? Can't you prune it? As a person in my world that deals with commercial property, well, that's just too big. Well, and so then a lot of people that do design work will say, well, okay, we'll put a forest pansy in. And that to me is not, it's a tree, but it's not what I call a real tree. So if we're going to look at a project like this, and we know that these trees aren't going to survive this work, then we need to look at the species they're putting in and ask for a species that, or a bigger than a 2-inch caliper, which is our standard. Ask for a larger caliper that maybe need a little more babysitting, but it'll give us the biggest bang for our buck as long as it's not too big. So there's a lot of things that the Urban Forestry Commission, now that we have Keith with us, to head for our future.
Agreed.
That's my 2 cents again.
Well, we are toward the end of time, so we'll keep this on the agenda so we can revisit as the project progresses. But thank you, Sharon, for bringing it to our attention. The very last thing is update from Greenworks. Dawn.
Thanks. So we are happy to announce that we've hired a community forestry coordinator for the organization, Sarah Millar, and she just started yesterday. So we're excited to have her on board. She'll be managing our tree keeper program and working at the nursery and doing tree adoption events and tree plantings in the community. Anything related to urban forestry. So I hope you get to meet her soon. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So that is the end of our agenda items. Anything else? All right, well then we don't have to vote, but I have to ask if there is any objection to adjourning. And if not, then we can adjourn. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.